Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 Podcast. We are previewing the Baylor Bears in this episode. Our 2022 team previews roll on. We have finally hit the teams that are in the league this year, and we have to start off with the team that won it last year and the team to pick that was picked to finish number one this year. So Drake Toll is going to help us out. We're going to preview Baylor football in 2022 right after this.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, joined by Drake Toll of Locked On Baylor. Drake, how are you, my friend?
Dude, I am as far from Texas as you could possibly get in the Continental 48 right now, and I am having withdrawals as we speak, but I had a conversation with someone today about football season and how we're like 23 days away or whatever it is. I'm not very good at math. I'm a journalism major, but we're on the cusp of football season. And I don't think as a Baylor fan, you could be more excited about 2022.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's coming up, and I know you folks in Texas love your high school football. I'm about a month away from calling my first high school game, which, it's once that starts up, it's time for college. And once college gets going, it's time for NFL. So it just kind of all rolls into it. And I guess with Baylor, it's really interesting because you have to start with last year when you talk about this year, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think the idea is, can you parlay what happened last year into this year and into beyond? And I don't think necessarily the reputation of the conference is staked on that happening, but I do think there's a certain element of what happened last year was awesome with Oklahoma State and Baylor, considering what was happening with Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah.
And it would be really awesome if that kept going. So do you think that there's, I'm not saying the team feels this or anything, it's just two guys talking, but you think there's kind of conference-wide pressure for Baylor to be good once again, to make sure they hold off Texas and OU, but also they present that image moving forward? They are or can be considered a national power.
Yeah, in a way, I think it falls on every single team to prove that without Texas and Oklahoma, this conference can still be competitive, not just with each other, but on a national scale. So Oklahoma State going and winning a New Year's Day game last season against Notre Dame was huge. Baylor going and winning the Sugar Bowl against Ole Miss, also huge. How well can these brands stick together nationally when OU and Texas, your two biggest moneymakers, are gone? Baylor is a part of that. Do I think that they are the cornerstone in that? No. If Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State are the only three teams to win Big 12 titles for the next 15 years, they do so successfully, especially beating teams outside of the Big 12. I don't know if anybody's going to care that it is specifically Baylor being successful. But if every team can stay out of the Kansas cellar, if there can only be one Kansas, that's the key to the Big 12 still being respected across college football. Why is the Pac-12 dying right now? Why does nobody care about the Pac-12? They have like 7 Kansases. The whole bottom half of the conference can kick rocks. No one cares. They literally put them at 1 a.m.
I think they'd resent that, but okay.
Probably so, but they literally put them at 1 a.m. so that people would watch their football games. Like, we're going to call it after dark, and it's going to make money now. And it doesn't. So I don't know if it's Baylor being necessarily a successful program, but it's at least treading water. And Dave Aranda is going to do so much more than that. So for me, hell yeah, let's go win some freaking football games. In the grand scheme of things, too, I think a healthy Baylor only helps the core of the Big 12, as it would for any of these teams being healthy.
So, let's just talk about this group this year. Do you think they should have been picked? Well, I'll just ask you. Did you pick them to finish number one in the league this year?
In my second year as a voter for the Big 12, it was my first year to pick Baylor as the number one team in the Big 12. I felt like a homer. When I did it, when I filled it out, I was like, is anybody else going to do that? And I'll be honest with you, I thought the answer was no. I was actually kind of surprised that Baylor was number one in the Big 12. I don't know if you were too.
Not shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. It's like Oklahoma's run this league for so long.
Yep.
That I think they deserve that respect. And also, I'll tell you this, Drake, like their schedule is really easy. Right. That's kind of why we're, because I think the thing about this league this year, it's so even. That's the one thing about, and I think this is going to hurt us, the national conversation overall. Like, I would be really surprised if Baylor was able to match what they did last year, just because there is some attrition and they're switching quarterbacks and they lost 2 tremendous players on defense and they lost some tremendous players on offense.
Yeah.
And like, I think I think there's a version of Baylor in November that looks like the version of Baylor in November we saw last year, but maybe the October and the September aren't the October and September we saw last year, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think the finished product might be great for some of these teams. I think we have to work. The thing about Texas and Oklahoma, like, those schools have some work to do before they get to kind of what's the finished product. I think Baylor is starting from maybe a better point. I don't know that for sure. So to answer your question, like, long way to answer your question, like, to flip back to you, I mean, I think 1, 2, or 3 would not have been surprising to see in either of this place. Also, but the Vegas win total right now for them over under 7.5.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the thing. Vegas does not love Baylor to win the Big 12 title. You're looking at similar odds. I think Bet Online has like Baylor and West Virginia tied, and that really is the true parity at the Big 12 conference this next season. Josh, if West Virginia finishes third in the conference, I won't be shocked. If West Virginia finishes eighth in the conference, I won't be shocked. If Kansas State's the same way, Texas is the same way. Texas Tech, if they end up winning 4 conference games next year, I won't be floored, while some people out there would. I think, again, it's the parity of the conference. For Baylor, their issue. Here's why I didn't have Baylor. I put them number 1 because you're kind of obligated to when they have at least a shot. But I didn't think they'd be there because if you look deeper into the schedule, Baylor goes to Morgantown. They've never won there. No matter how bad West Virginia is or how good Baylor is, there's a force field once you enter Morgantown where Baylor just can't win. Now it's Thursday night game too, so it's funkier. So Morgantown, you don't win very well there. You go to Norman. You go to Austin. You're going to Ames. You're going to Lubbock. Holy crap, man. Like, dissect that right there.
Yeah, they drew. And also, not to mention a non-con, they go at BYU.
Yeah. So you're looking at those 6 road games, and you're telling me that of the 5 conference games, even if you exclude BYU, of those 5 conference games, that Baylor's going to escape that 4-1 or 5-0, which is probably what they need to do to win the Big 12 conference. That's a big ask for anybody. I don't think last year's Baylor team goes 4-1 or 5-0 in that stretch on the road. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be asking them to, once again, at BYU, at Iowa State, at West Virginia, at Tech, at OU, at Texas. If you go 4-2 in that stretch, that is fantastic. That is really successful. That is awesome, right? And we've seen teams get caught. We saw Oklahoma State last year get caught at Jack Trice, albeit controversially. They get caught at Jack Trice, right? We know West Virginia can, like you said, it's a force field for them. We all know that it's really tough to go to Oklahoma and win those games. And look, that game's either going to be at noon or it's going to be at night. There's a chance it could be either one of those. And obviously the big matchup at Texas. And look, that one's a crapshoot because we got no clue how good Texas is going to be at that point. But really, a lot of this, let's talk about the big choice, the big decision that Dave Aranda was asked about. And for some reason, his second question at Media Days, the first question, Dave Aranda, was, Dave, what are you reading? The second question was, tell us about your quarterback situation. That should have been flipped. So, I agree with this more. I think this was the right move to go to Blake Shapen. I think Drake, in my opinion, that this team is going to need more from its offense this year than it needed from last year's offense. Yeah. And because of that, this move reflects that reality, I think. Do you agree?
I think a big part of this move is the ceiling of Blake Shapen. Gary Bohannon is pretty much, I don't want to say he maxed out his ceiling, but he was getting there. He is a player that was not necessarily winning you football games. Baylor was not putting their entire offense on Gary Bohannon's back. Instead, it was Abram Smith or Treston Ebner. Gary, at the same time, wasn't losing you games, except for TCU that we don't have to talk about, or Oklahoma State on the road. But if you're asking that of your quarterback, hey, don't win us games, but don't lose us games, you just need somebody who can stand out there and not turn the football over, which is what Gary did for most of the season. Blake Shapen's the opposite of that. His ceiling is so high because he can go out and pass for 400 yards in a football game and no one's going to be shocked. You saw him in the Big 12 championship game, completed his first 17 passes in that one, broke a record in that facility. Josh, I don't know if you know this, but at AT&T Stadium, they play NFL football games every Sunday. Alabama plays there in their little Chick-fil-A kickoff. That's in Atlanta. Whatever they play there in the early seasons. The Cotton Bowls play there every year. Every Texas high school football state championship is in that stadium. Blake Shapen has the record for most consecutive completions of all of those things. So obviously he's doing something right. So to go back to your first point, holy crap, the questions across the board at the Big 12 Media Days, I was floored. Some of them I was like, what's happening right now? Not everybody gets a microphone. Number 2.
I will tell you this. Generally speaking, the bad questions come from the TV people. I mean, they ask some softballs.
Oh, also not just TV, but like out the random markets, like the West Virginia or the Iowa State, where it's someone from like Des Moines, and you're like, Des Moines, why are you here? Or the random, like, how did you sneak in? And after post that, I was thinking, okay, when's the question coming about realignment or quarterback? Now that we know what Dave Aranda read, sweet. Then you get into the conversation about Blake Shapen and Gary Bohannon. And first, Dave talked about person over player, right? And making that decision when he did for Gary Bohannon to go to USF, which behooves Gary Bohannon looking forward. And I think it behooves Baylor. This is a riskier decision, Josh. It's a much riskier decision because you already know what you're going to get with Gary Bohannon. But Blake Shapen's ceiling is higher. Dave Aranda is betting on Blake Shapen. And I'll tell you this right now in the offseason, here's your new update. Kicking butt. Can't say the A word. Kicking butt right now. Lifting every single day to the top of those charts. I mean, he's that guy in the locker room. When you have a guy
best shape of his life. Is that what you're
best
saying?
shape of his life. That guy is like, he's like the opposite of Eddie Lacy in the offseason. He gets better. And I think that's going to go a long way. You're going to see Gary Bohannon, contrary to what I told you on your podcast a month and a half ago, Gary Bohannon could have never been the Big 12 quarterback, first team all Big 12. Blake Shapen has that ceiling. Will it happen? I can't guarantee it, but it's at least possible.
Yes. And look, that's what I'm saying. You know, what I'm trying to say here is really like, if Blake Shapen goes into next year and we're like, that's the best quarterback in the Big 12 for sure, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, what I think is it might take a few growing pains to get there. Because that's the thing about this is like, it's going to, you know, the receiving core is relatively new. And I'm looking at this. I just ran the numbers while you're talking there. 2,700 yards on the ground. Yeah. And I believe, let me get a total, 23 touchdowns is what they're losing in the running department.
Yeah, no, that's not good news. Thank you for saying that. Here is the good news. 2,700 yards on the ground and 23 touchdowns?
Yes.
You get 2,700 yards on the ground and 23 touchdowns back via your offensive line. So Xavier Newman-Johnson, that's a guy that you lose, but at the same time, you get back Khalil Keith, Grant Miller, Connor Galvin, and Jacob Gall, and Xavier Newman-Johnson probably is going to be replaced by someone better. So your O-line is going to be even better than it was as the best O-line according to PFF, which I hate PFF, by the way. I can't say that. I don't hate anybody.
Yeah, that's Jeff Grimes' effect, right? Because I mean that offensive line was, you know, really bad in 2020, and they overperformed there in 2021.
Horrible.
And so I think their true value is somewhere in the middle. And
absolutely
probably on the higher side, right?
And that Eric Mateos, Jeff Grimes, done that's like Flip My House, Fixer Upper, whatever they did day one. They came in and they're like, we're just going to change everything. And it worked. So you get 4 of those 5 guys back. And that at least, Baylor's going to have a running back by committee. It looks like 3 guys that are truly going to get pretty even snaps until somebody comes to the forefront of that. But Jeff Grimes isn't going to ask you to go be an Abram. Look at Josh. Abram Smith was not a running back. He was a linebacker, but his offensive line was so freaking good that he felt so comfortable he could blossom into one of the best running backs in the Big 12. There's no reason Baylor doesn't have that again from at least one of the guys that they throw out there. So that gives me confidence. If there's one position that I want to have back next season, it's the entire O-line. I mean, that just gives you so much continuity. I think Baylor's in good shape there, but you're right. Receivers, you got none. You have Baylor. Like half the names on there, you're like, oh, that guy plays for Baylor, and running backs is it's a pretty similar scenario. So look past that to Blake Shapen and the O line, and you feel okay. But you're right. No, thank you for making that point. Great point.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of brings the question, like, how much of a guy like Armani Winfield are we going to see, right? I mean, it's a guy who's freshman, is 4-star, like,
yeah.
You know, and it's good and bad, right? It's good and bad to have a guy like that there. You know, you want to see a young guy like that play, but also that means that there are some holes that he has to fill at that age. Quick break here, then we'll talk some defense here. Today's show is brought to you all by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Go to BetOnline today, and you all can place a wager on whether or not you think Baylor will win the requisite 7.5 games. They can't win that many, so you can bet whether they will go over or under that number right now. You can bet on them to win the conference. You can bet on anybody you want to win any conference over at BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Best place to go. College football futures, Major League Baseball. Want to bet on Juan Soto's next team? You guys can do that as well. BetOnline, NASCAR, F1, UFC, Bellator, boxing. They got it all. So BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, so the one thing we can say about Baylor is that they probably the best offensive line in the conference.
Yeah.
Probably the best defensive line in the conference. I mean,
Oh,
this thing,
not close. Top 3
Cole
in the country.
Maxwell, Siaki, Ika, Gabe Hall. And I'll tell you this, Drake, we'll get your thoughts on this. I voted for Siaki Ika for Defensive Player of the Year preseason.
Yeah.
The reason why I did this, and I don't, I'm not sure, this was not me predicting he's going to win it. I don't think he will win it. But I think guys like Felix Anudike-Uzomah is going to get better numbers. That position lends itself to. But a lot of the times your job as a guy who's interior defensive lineman, and especially for a guy who is the nose tackle, the interior defensive lineman, your job is sometimes not to tackle people. It is to draw one or two more, sometimes 1 to 2 guys, disrupt things, create lanes for other guys. He is the most disruptive player, I think, in this conference right now. The numbers might not bear that out. He's got a slight edge over Anudike-Uzomah. I think he will be the most disruptive player this year. So your thoughts on that defensive line anchored by Siaki Ika?
100%. The defensive line is they're just a wild bunch of dudes, man. They're tough to corral. The problem with Siaki Ika, yes, being the defensive player of the year in the Big 12, is that a defensive lineman could be triple teamed if you want to every single play. If you really want to go at Aaron Donald and make sure that guy doesn't get back to you, Aaron Donald can be stopped, 9 times out of 10 with a triple team. Siaki Ika will be the same way. Even though he's on the interior, they'll find a way to stop him, whereas a linebacker may have a much better shot at cleaning up plays, getting tackles. But when you have Siaki Ika and Gabe Hall and Jackson Player, and the list goes on and on and on and on of the guys that Baylor's going to throw out there from defensive end to interior and defensive tackle, nose guard, and the different linemen that you'll get, that's scary. I don't care who you are. Those guys, segue, are like a bunch of coyotes. Or Coyotes. I don't know. I think it's a hockey jersey. I just bought it.
That is hockey. That is the Arizona Coyotes.
Okay. Well, that's news to me, man. They're like a bunch of coyotes on the defensive line. Look at that. It's a cool logo. Bunch of coyotes on the defensive line. They're going to go out there and just run wild. I mean, you like line me up. Line Texas up against Baylor. Dude, have you seen Texas O-line? Bijan Robinson's great.
They've paid in games. That's what they do.
Who's going to block for Bijan Robinson? Who's going to do that? You and me. We could probably walk on right now and at least have a fair shake.
I need to put on a few more pounds if I can do that.
I've seen you flex.
I'm getting there. I'm good. Problem for them is they've lost a guy in Terrell Bernard and also a guy in Jalen Petrie, who I think are going to be two awesome players, and he can't just replace them. Good news is Dylan Doyle is a fantastic player in the middle of this defense. Matt Jones as well at linebacker is going to help them out. But what are you going to do in the secondary to replace? Now, here's what I'll say to the defensive line point. Oftentimes, your best pass coverage is the guys up front. And if they get home, you don't have to play much pass coverage, right? I mean, that can sometimes be an equalizer in terms of how good your corners and safeties have to be. But, what's the strategy there trying to replace some heavy hitters, if you will?
I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there and say if we could just do like a thing where the secondary doesn't play, maybe only have like 8 guys on defense every game for both teams, like sign a contract, that'd be dope. Josh, it's not good. It's not great. You have some versatile linebackers, like you mentioned, and Dylan Doyle, Josh White coming from LSU too, and Matt Jones. The secondary, though, a guy who could bring you back production from last season was one of the team leaders at that as well in Christian Morgan. And then, Josh, it just gets thin really fast. You're missing guys like even Raleigh Tejada, who last year I wasn't the most excited with. I didn't see him and think, oh man, he jumps off the page. And
did he get drafted or did he get signed by somebody? I think he got
Tejada signed. Yeah. So Tejada's gone. No one ever threw the ball at Tejada where I was like, yes, you threw the ball at Tejada. You're screwed. No, I mean, it became a tough look from time to time for that guy. So him being gone is something I wish that I could sit here, and I'm sure there are a lot of hosts. They're going to get on here when they do their team previews and say like, oh, this is, these guys are going to rise to the occasion. And maybe Baylor has that, but I'm going to be honest with you right now. I just don't see this secondary being elite. And there's nothing that I've seen across this roster that would make me think that they are going to be elite. You're going to need to you're going to be able to stop the run with what Baylor has up front. But then past that, if teams want to go deep on you, I just don't know if we have an answer. Because even in the spring game, you're looking at guys in the first string with Blake Shapen all the way through the third and fourth string quarterbacks that were having a lot of success throwing the football. And it's like, okay, Is that because the fourth string quarterback is really good or the defense is just okay in the secondary? That's going to be a problem. Get to the quarterback, get to him fast, but screen play to the outside, foof. Josh, if other teams are able to do it successfully, if they can open up the top or even run just okay to the point where Baylor has to focus on two things at once, that's where Baylor's going to lose football games, especially on the road.
All right, so Drake, I ask everybody this prediction. What do you think the Baylor Bears end up record wise? I'm kind of trending towards 8-4. I think it's 8-4, and I'm not sure it's like I don't think it's a bad 8-4. I don't think it's 8-4. You should be like, I know Baylor fans might be disappointed, picked to finish first, but like them being picked to finish first, as you and I talk about it, that's a huge reputation one. It's what it is. That's Dave Aranda built something that people are really impressed by. And look, I'm not saying this roster can't do it, but like maybe 2024 or 2023, excuse me, is the year that we're like Baylor. I think there's a chance, and I think maybe they're building towards that. What are your thoughts on them maybe building towards that big year next year? I know they're going to lose some, but especially on offense, I think they need a year to reset.
Yeah, first shout out Al Walcott too, defensive quarterback.
Yes,
guy's going to be solid. I like Al Walcott. Schedule-wise, though, for next season, game at BYU on the road. There's where I'm going to be honest, Josh, Baylor could go 11-1 next season. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, call the press. This is insane. Baylor could go 7-5 next season, and I'm telling you, I would still not be shocked. Not because they are a true 7-5 football team. If they played all 12 games at a neutral site, they're probably 10-2, but Baylor has struggled on the road. Dave's going to have the guys ready to go on the road and play, but it just seems like that weird historical thing where there's not really been a point in time where Baylor's just been like, they're world beaters anywhere they go. So you had that blip late in the Bryles era, but even under Matt Rule, it was like, oh God, a road game. So it's the weird years where you have OU at home, Texas at home, Iowa State at home, West Virginia at home. Those are great. The off years, that's where Baylor went 2-7. And a big part of that, Dave Aranda's first year, was being on the road for so many games. So now I've given you the 7-5 to the 11-1. I think the ceiling is 11-1. I don't see Baylor going 12-0. I'm going to meet it at 9-3. I feel like that appeases both of those. So Baylor at 9-3, I think your losses probably come. I think Baylor does end up going to BYU and getting a big win. If they lose that, I'm worried.
So? I think they might get smoked in that game.
They could.
I think there's a chance they might get smoked.
8:00 game to 8 p.m.
That's
game.
that's kind of. It's like,
it's
you played Albany in game one, right?
Exactly. Right, so what's your big preparation? The reason I think they probably sneak away with one at BYU is just still the talent gap there. You saw it last season. When BYU came to Baylor, you could tell those guys were gassed in the third and fourth quarter.
There is a difference. I don't know if it's as pronounced.
I agree. I believe
I think the skill positions. I think BYU is really good. I think their offensive line got a little bit better too. So.
Definitely, and that's in the trenches.
By the way, that might be the game I'm most pumped for in non-conference. Like, I know Texas Alabama, we're all ready for it, but like that game is going to be awesome because also it's going to be a conference game. It's going to be upcoming.
Oh, sellout! They'll sell it out. It'll be they'll do like a whiteout.
Yeah,
it'll be.
And Baylor is going to be probably top 15 going into the year, right? I mean, they're going to get overranked. We all know how this stuff works. Like preseason rankings are a joke. But like the fact that Baylor is going to have a big number next to his name or smaller number, which is better number next to their name. Going to be exciting at a place like Provo.
Yeah. Oh, I think Baylor is definitely. I see them coming in the 18 to 12 range, somewhere in there. 12 on the high end, 18 on the low end. I've seen them at top 10 for like big game boomer, but it's big game boomer. I like the guy, but the AP poll does not reflect anything that he's ever done in his life. And so, looking down the schedule, though, that BYU game's huge. You lose that game, you might go 7-5. That may spiral you into not being able to win on the road. But across this schedule, I do go 9-3 with losses. I think out of Texas, what we already mentioned, those 5 games, the Texas on the road, Oklahoma on the road, West Virginia on the road, you go to Tech and to Ames, Iowa. I think Baylor goes probably 2-3 in that stretch, or if 3-2, they slip up like they did at TCU last year against one of those random teams. You're like, shouldn't have lost that one. Yeah, it was terrible. People forget about that. That was a bad game.
That was a horrific loss.
Baylor could do against Chandler Morris, who was not good again, by the way. He just stopped being good after that. So I truly believe, Josh, 9-3 is where Baylor's going to sit next season, but in a respectable 9-3. Just because you're going to the Alamo Bowl, don't get upset. It's okay. Probably going to miss the Big 12 championship game. That's fine. I want Baylor to go 12-0. Nobody out there I'm going to get hate mail. People are going to tweet at me about this.
But here's the thing. This is not supposed to be some biased preview. I'm trying to give the folks an honest read on this team. So Drake, what they want is your honesty. So
yeah,
look on Locked On Baylor, you can preach to the choir. On here, we want your honest, sober thoughts. So we appreciate your candor here on Locked On Big 12.
Well, I'm telling you, Josh, other people are going to be like, oh, our team's going to go 11-1. And you're like, you're Kansas, man. You can't, please, you're Kansas. So I'm trying to be as reasonable as possible. I say, Josh, last season I said 6-6, and Baylor went 10-2.
I did the same thing too.
Yeah, Baylor went 12-2 overall. I said 6-6. So I hope I'm wrong at 9-3, but if I'm not, I'm still happy. Josh, did you know this? Baylor was very bad at football for a very long time. Did you know that?
I heard. And even recently they had some bad years in there as well.
Crazy.
Drake, where can people find you and your work on All of It's Variety?
That right there, at Drake C. Toll. Almost more importantly, though, at Locked On Baylor on Twitter. Twitter is the biggest avenue, in my opinion, for spreading Locked On news and stuff. SEO, YouTube, all that stuff is great, but Twitter's where you build your actual following and a base of people that keep up with you. So if you'd love to keep up with Baylor, or you love college football realignment and expansion, we are doing a ton of that right now. Content out the wazoo. Also, on Wednesday, we made a case of why Blake Shapen will be the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Come prove us wrong at Locked On Baylor on YouTube or wherever you find your podcasts.
That's a bridge too far for me. We appreciate your time, Drake Toll. Thank you so much, man.
Dude, always a pleasure. You got to invite me to more of your little round tables that you guys do, your little exclusive round tables. We were picked first.
You weren't godfathered in. I mean, look, here's the thing. We're gonna lose John. We're gonna lose John Williams, right? It's happening. We're gonna lose John, obviously, to the SEC.
Yeah.
Right. John is out the door. So there are going to be, and we're losing Jonathan Davis as well, who's come on that sometimes too. So
I like that guy.
But we have an even distribution right now. We have Jake Hatch, who is Locked On Cougars, an incoming team. We have Steven Simcox of Locked On Horned Frogs.
When his internet works.
A current team. And then we have John Williams, Locked On Sooners, an outgoing team. 3 separate perspectives there. And so when those guys play ball, I play ball with them. There are opportunities. Don't act like you get left out. I've extended the olive branch. All right, you'll be there.
I've been like 3 of them, and I kicked butt. And then you were like, "No, Baylor's too good."
No, there was the one where you made the point about, I forget what it was, but yeah,
Gary Bohannon being the best quarterback in the Big 12.
No. You made the point about, there's that one too. You made the point about not having a conference championship game in the Big 12.
Oh, yeah.
To which I replied, that is what got the conference not included in the college football playoff when TCU and Baylor were vying for that spot. 1 true champion when they had 2 true champions.
3 letters, Josh. SEO. You just got to say stuff sometimes, and it works.
All right, Drake. Thanks.